Welcome to this Dynamic Boards NED Community meetup. Our topic for today is risk as a strategic multiplier, and our speaker is Richard Anderson. Richard is a portfolio non-exec director, an advisor to startups, a proponent of new technologies, and a risk consultant. He's also a photographer and digital artist. Richard, over to you.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. I guess I've been doing this risk thing since the mid 90s. I qualified as a chartered accountant in 1983, moved full time into risk about 94, 95 when I was a partner at Coopers and Lybrand. If you remember that firm, now part of PwC. And when I first started doing risk, I used to say to people, we were in the fastest period of change that had probably ever existed. Boy, are we on steroids now. The change that is going on, I just think over the last 5, 6 years, we saw COVID, we saw Ukraine, we've seen Gaza and Iran, and we've seen the fallout from Brexit, whichever way you look at it. It's probably not quite what Brexiteers expected back in the years when we voted. And in the States, the change is dramatic. USAID essentially shut down, medical research being vastly cut, travel bans, rule of law under question, tariffs coming, going, sideways, upwards, downwards, backwards, who knows which way up tomorrow. And all of that is putting strain on our businesses. Our businesses don't quite know which way they're going to be looking today or tomorrow. And at the same time, we have incredible technological change that is happening. In my sector, which is fintech and financial services predominantly at the moment, it used to be enough to say you were cloud native. Now you have to say you're AI enabled and blockchain based in order to begin to make a difference in this world. Some of the fintech gurus from the West Coast would say you either need to come up with a blockchain message or you need to come up with an AI message. Actually, I think you need to come up with an AI on blockchain message these days. And all of this is leading to degrees of risk that we've never seen before. And yet, at the same time, the regulators are stopping us from doing things. The regulators are creating rules that they insist should be reported on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. They've created conversations within organizations that are only happening in silos because of the senior management SMCR rules. And of course, Rachel Reeves would have us believe, rightly or wrongly, I make no comment on it politically, that's not for here and now, that we're at a time where we have severe financial constraints on the country. And she's asking the regulators to change. She's asking regulators, not just in financial services, but right across the board, to enable competition, to enable growth. So where does risk management play a part in that? I'm going to start from the proposition that risk management has become the department of internal control in many organizations. Many years ago, I was asked if I was applying for a job, and the interviewer said to me, "Richard, you don't look like a person who would say no." That is not the purpose of risk management. The purpose of risk management is to enable organizations to grow, to develop securely and safely in the knowledge that they are doing the right things to enable that growth. We have an investment profile that would suggest that it is infinitely preferable to spend gazillions of pounds on counting yesterday's spend in terms of our accounting systems, in terms of SAP or Oracle or whatever it is. But boards are frequently not prepared to spend a fraction of that money in looking forward. And where is the value in your organization? The value of your organization is based on your future cash flows, what you can do tomorrow, how you can build for tomorrow. So I'm going to suggest that boards all need some risk expertise on them. They all need to be looking upwards and outwards, not downwards and inwards. I'm not saying that they should stop looking down and in, but they need to also lift their heads upwards and outwards. So I'm going to make one plea and suggest three conversations that I think we should all be having in our boardrooms today. The first is, I think in terms of what I describe as balanced risk. So I look at risk as being the balance between three pairs of tensions. The first pair of tensions is we all need to take risk in order to grow our business. If we're not taking risk, we will wither and die. But equally, we've got to avoid pitfalls. We've got to avoid falling into the elephant traps that are around us. And those two are in tension on opposite ends of scales. And the more you do of one, the less you do of the other. And we've got to be able to broaden our capacity for taking more risk whilst making sure that we are protecting ourselves from the elephant traps. The more you do of it, the better you will perform until you're doing too much. So you don't want to broaden it too far because that can become dangerous. The second pair of tensions that I think exist in most organizations are between the performance culture, what persuades people to get up in the morning, get out of bed and come to work. And in tension with that is the corporate culture, the corporate ethics that say that we want to do the right thing. Again, we need to be able to balance those. And the third pair of tensions, where I think risk is absolutely vital, is between doing what we need to do for the here and now and what we need to be able to do for tomorrow. Are multiple tomorrows. We don't actually know which of our tomorrows we're going to be facing. So I think actually Rachel Reeves probably demonstrated the risk of not managing that pair of tensions in the way that she approached coming into government, in that she reduced the risk of the here and now of not getting elected, but at the same time closed down many options which might have been valuable in a really difficult, deteriorating position. So I think that risk needs to change from the let me check that we're compliant with the regulations into looking at how are we managing our business across those three pairs of tensions. The second conversation that I would encourage you to have is about your risk culture. Now, risk culture is often looked at as being a subset of organizational culture. I'm going to radically suggest that it is totally different. It is about the balance between those three pairs of tensions. How do your people look at those three pairs of tensions? Are they even conscious of them? And how are you going to measure that? You're going to measure that by understanding the conversations that happen within the organization. So when I go in to carry out a review of risk culture, I'll say, Sarah, who do you talk to about risk? She's not got an enormous population of people within her business to talk to. So Sarah says, well, I speak to Bex and I speak about this, I speak about that. We speak on a weekly, daily basis and they're great conversations. I go to Bex and I say, who do you speak to about risk in your discussions about risk? And she said, oh, I speak to Christine. I said, do you speak to Sarah? She says, I don't even know who Sarah is. You know that there is no synapse there. We're looking for the creation of healthy synapses that encourage the discussion of risk. The third conversation that I would urge you to have in all of your organizations is about risk appetite. Risk appetite is definitively not about how hungry am I for risk. It's much more about where is my flight or fight response within this organization for responding to risk. There's lots and lots and lots of words written about risk appetite, all of which are contradictory. I would urge you to read the guidance from the Institute of Risk Management that was published a few years ago. And I think that if you within your boards are able to ascertain where you are against those three pairs of tensions, how vibrant your risk culture is, and where your risk appetite is leading you, you can change risk management into a strategic lever for the development of your company rather than being a bureaucratic burden. And en route to doing that, I'll leave you with my one plea, which is to chuck out the risk taxonomies that we're all using, which talk about reputation, operational, financial, strategic, etc., etc. What we need to be looking at is how can we develop a taxonomy that enables me to do something about the risk. And the best taxonomy that was ever developed was by a guy called Professor John Adams, who unfortunately passed away last year. But he talked about three types of risk. He talked about directly discernible. You get up in the morning, you get dressed, you go out of your front door, and you don't get knocked down by the number 10 bus as it whizzes past your front door because you're culturally attuned to managing that risk. The second type of risk is visible through science. You go on holiday somewhere exotic, you eat or drink something you shouldn't have done, you come back from holiday with cholera. Well, don't worry too much because actually there is a medical discipline that will help you to recover from that. There are lots of risks like that within our businesses where there is a professional discipline that manages the risk. And the third type he describes as being virtual risks. And by that, he means you don't know where you're starting with the risk, you don't know where you're going, and you sure as heck don't know where you are right now. And in this type of risk, people are liberated to argue from their ignorance, their preconceptions, and their prejudices, and by goodness they will. But what it does mean is when you recognize you've got a virtual risk, that you've got a lot more research to do before you get through to controlling it. So the excitement of risk is that it underpins the value of your organizations. If you manage it better than you were managing it before, the chances are that you can grow the value of your organization into the future in a sustainable way. And it provides a framework for all sorts of decision making which current risk management, quite frankly, fails to deliver. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Richard. I'm sure for many of you that was a refreshing take compared to the risk conversations you may be having with the boards you are on. Right, Richard has shared 3 questions that we're now going to take a pause and consider in light of his talk and your own experience. How do you manage your risk culture? Who are the main players in your ecosystems? And what are your key areas of ignorance? Take a moment to think about those now.